Hello, everyone. This is Mike Childress with the University of Kentucky here with the National Health Security Preparedness Index Program Management Office. We'll get started here shortly. I see about 3 folks in addition to myself and Brian Goodley on the Adobe Connect. There might be other individuals on the telephone line. I see Dara Lieberman and Mary McQueen and Jim Blumenstock online. If there are others on the phone who are not otherwise logged on to the Adobe Connect, welcome. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I see that Christine has joined us. Brian, can you hear me okay?
Hi, this is Erica Martin.
Oh, hi, Erica.
Yeah, Mike.
Sorry, essentially, I'm actually not able to get to my computer, but I am listening by phone.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Well, and Brian, I heard you, so I'm on speakerphone. I just want to make sure that folks can hear me okay. If at any point you can't, you can either indicate as such over the telephone, or you can type into the chat box if you're online just to give me a heads up. You can also use the chat box to pose any questions. You should feel free to interrupt me. Interrupt sounds like a harsh word. To stop me at any point during this presentation. If you have any questions, I'd rather address questions as they come up. I'll take a peek at the chat box periodically and look for questions. If I don't see it, just be patient. And Brian, if you see something and it doesn't seem like I do see it, please just give me a heads up and let me know.
I will do.
And Kathy, I see you've joined us, Kathy Slim. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started here. For those of you who are not otherwise on one of the work groups for the National Health Security Preparedness Index, we have 3 work groups, and the analytic methodology work group is the one that is regularly scheduled to meet during this time slot. And so since we've launched this Delphi as of last Friday and over the weekend, we decided to use this work group meeting, which was regularly scheduled, as an opportunity to both update work group members and to introduce those of you who have not been directly involved in this project, maybe at all, or maybe for the last 10 months. Superfluous or redundant to those of you who have been involved in this for a while, but I've included some information for the benefit of those who were recommended to participate in this Delphi by perhaps one of the work group members, but maybe you don't have a lot of information about what this is all about. So I just want to start with a few background slides. The presentation that I'm using today is almost exactly like the one that you might have seen already. It was included with the email that I sent out informing you of the Delphi. So this index actually started a few years ago when we release this upcoming in December, January, next version of the index. It will be the third release. And so the previous two index releases were done under the auspices of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and ASTO, the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, along with, as you can see on the slide, over 35 other stakeholder organizations. And it was a large group of people who came together to really, who are really the intellectual architects of what we have now. The current version, if you've gone to the website, you have seen the current version of the index, and that was released last December in 2014. Now, as of January 1st, 2015, CDC, in an arrangement with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, agreed to transfer leadership of the index from CDC to RWJF. And RWJF chose a group at the University of Kentucky led by a public health professor, Dr. Glenn Mays, to take the current index and try to make some enhancements, to try to make some additions. Some of these are enhancements and additions that the previous group had on their to-do list, and some of them are new ones that we have introduced. And all of that is, I'll talk about some of that here in subsequent slides. Our work, as all RWJF projects, is governed ultimately by something called a NAC, or National Advisory Committee. And our NAC is comprised of these 14 individuals. They meet at least quarterly, mostly virtually, as we are meeting today, but at least once a year, we try to get together as a group. And so this group got together once earlier this year, and as a matter of fact, is getting together again next week in Princeton, New Jersey, at RWJF headquarters to talk about this Delphi, for example, and some other proposed changes that we are presenting to them for the next release of the index. And they ultimately will decide whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down on some of these proposals. At least well, some of the individuals on the current NAC, including the current chair, Tom Inglesby, were involved in the previous iterations of the index development. And in fact, Tom was also the chair of the previous group. So there's actually a lot of continuity between the previous group and the current one. And that's reflected in part by the NAC, as well as the work group composition. Again, we're still in the background. Let me see, I actually rearranged these slides. I wanted to talk about this one first, and then I'll go back to the other one. This is the current structure of the index. There are, as you might have seen on the previous slide, 194 measures that comprise this index. These are among and between and within all of these boxes here. Now there are 6, we call them domains. There are 6 domains across the top. We're proposing to add a new one, and we're keeping with the nomenclature of a domain, and that's the pre-event community status one. Within the current index structure, though, there are 6, and then there are 18 subdomains below or that comprise each of these domains. So the domain of health security surveillance is really comprised of two subdomains: health surveillance and epidemiological investigation, and biological monitoring and laboratory testing, and so on. Each of these is comprised of various domains. So you see here we have the 194 individual measures. These are the things that are listed in the visual analog scale that some of you have already done the Delphi, and when you do it, you'll see that there are individual measures there that we're asking you to evaluate. Now, we're not asking you to evaluate all 194, only a subset of those. They're organized in 18 subdomains, and then the six domains, and then all of that gets rolled into a state average, or a number that is indicative of a state's health security and preparedness. Now, we've highlighted this, that these are unweighted averages, that the item measures within each subdomain are actually averaged to create a subdomain number. And then the subdomains are averaged to create a domain number. And then the domains are averaged to create a state level overall number. And in all of this rolling up, each of these individual measures are theoretically treated equally. That is to say, they're unweighted. But in reality, there's an implicit weighting going on here in the computation, because there are different numbers of item measures in the various subdomains. And so by definition, the more measures, the less weight or the less importance any given measure has. And clearly, that's not something that most folks, and we certainly weren't comfortable with, and the previous group was aware of this as well. And so hence this Delphi. If you don't weight the measures or the domains, and this here just shows some work that we did actually back in March, where we did a sensitivity analysis of all 194 measures, and they're listed up and down this vertical axis. And the bar indicates the percentage change in a state's index score if you change that measure from its minimum to its maximum. Now, part of the difference in how influential a measure is a function of, the weighting scheme or the unweighting scheme. Part of it is a function of what kind of variable it is, whether it's a dichotomous variable or a continuous variable. And part of it is a function of the scaling technique that was used and that is being used in the current version of the index. And we're proposing to make some changes so that when you see a chart like this for the upcoming index, it will be a purposeful reflection of both of the scaling and the kind of variable it is, and really how important or how influential a panel of experts think a particular item measure is relative to its subdomain. Now, in addition to the 194 current measures, we are proposing to add some new measures and a new subdomain, which was status, which I think was a title that the earlier creators of the index had used. And so in total then, this Delphi includes right around 250 item measures And again, I emphasize that no given individual is expected to go through and evaluate all of those. Although some people have been presented with all of them if they decide they want to get really ambitious. Some key assumptions. Really, there is just a couple, and they're big ones. One is that one of the things that came up in the work groups as we were trying to figure out how to do this is, what do we want the Delphi participants to think about with respect to the threat scenario, if you will? Because some of these measures and some of these subdomains are clearly more relevant given one scenario as opposed to another. So for example, the capacity of your labs to evaluate biological agents would be very important in a whole range of these scenarios, but they might not be that important or as important in scenario 15, which is a cyber attack. And also we know that we have geographic differences. Here in California, of course, is a state that is at threat always for major earthquake. Kentucky too. Maybe a lot of people might not realize that the area around St. Louis and western Kentucky is a site of a very seismically threatening area, although the earthquakes don't occur with the same regularity that they do in California. And then there are other areas of the state or the country where earthquakes just aren't that important. So what are they supposed to think about when they think about how important an item measure is? Well, there's no good solution to it except that we ask people to think about these item measures across the full spectrum of the 15 national planning scenarios and think about how a particular item measure might be relevant to a subdomain on average with respect to these 15 planning scenarios. And we ask people, another key assumption is to, in addition to this all hazards approach of thinking about this, is to think about the concept of health security and preparedness and resilience, community resilience broadly, and to really to have kind of a broad concept about national health security, health preparedness, and resilience, because it should include not just the preparedness community, some questions that have come up. People have been sending me a few emails, and so some of these questions reflect those. We asked some background information very early in the Delphi about what state you're living in, and that's only for background information. That's only so that we have a sense of who participated in the Delphi. It is not an indication that we want you to necessarily evaluate these factors with your own state in mind. Instead, we'd like you to think about the typical state or the country overall when assessing these item measures. Now, we mentioned the state because this is a state-level index, and we're collecting state-level data. But we want to think about the typical state when doing the assessment. Can I go back and change my assessment? The answer is yes. As long as it is before the closing date, which is next Monday, October 19th. And then I have some directions here on how you can do that. These directions were also included in the email, and I apologize for there not being a a cleaner way to do it, but you can go back and do that if you clear out your cache or you open up a different browser. And just so that we know to ignore your first assessment, just append V2 to the end of your unique identifying number, and that way we'll know which one to use. And then another one is that some people have been very humble, and they've indicated that that they don't feel that they have sufficient knowledge or expertise to participate. Everyone who has who received an email from me is either a work group member, and several people fit multiple categories. They were involved in they were involved in a work group with the previous iterations of the index, or they were recommended by someone who was in a current work group, or you were somebody who publishes extensively and has been cited in the literature on this topic, on one of the topics. So by definition, everybody has really is an expert in one or more of these areas. You all have, each of you has extensive experience and expertise. And so, you know, at the same time, you may not be comfortable and you may not really know or feel like you know what the correct answer is on you know, to give an educated and informed assessment. And so there is a don't know checkbox available, and so, you know, use that. But we recognize that no one has perfect and complete comprehensive knowledge about everything. And we're just asking you to really exercise your own professional best judgment in making these assessments. Now I want to just walk through a little bit of the online instrument. Enter your unique identifier. So when you get in, this is the first screen you're going to see. And if you do more than one survey, as I say, if you do different domains, the instructions, and this is some of the information that I just went through earlier. We believe it'll take about 20 minutes to complete, and that should be a maximum. You could get through this a lot longer. Some of these domains have a lot more item measures and will take longer than others. Some of them are you know, less than half the number of measures than the longest one, and those won't take as long. Where we ask folks again, what state do you live in? And again, this is just for background or demographic information. We're curious about who, you know, what kind of work the participants do, and so that's this screen. Where you feel your primary area of expertise is. And then we get into the visual analog scales. And so what we're asking people to do is to evaluate how important a particular item measure is with respect to the subdomain within which it is included. And we have a brief description here of the subdomain. In this case, it's the social resilience, which is part of that pre-event community status domain. And there's just a brief sentence that reflects it. Then we get into, and this is actually, these are item measures from a different subdomain. This is the cross-sector and community collaboration subdomain. But this is what you'll see. You'll see the item measure. Let me get my little pointer here. You'll see the item measure listed here. and described. If you want more information, you can click this button, and it will actually take you out of this website. You can get back. It'll open up a new browser window. It'll take you to the website, to a page where these item measures are listed, and there's more detail about them. And then we ask that you use this little slider button to move it and to indicate where 0 would indicate it is not important at all to the subdomain, and 10 would indicate that it's extremely important to the subdomain. If you don't know, then you can click that box, and that just indicates don't know. Now 0 is a valid answer here. But if you don't touch anything, it won't register. It won't be a 0. But if you do click on this button here, it will register a 0. And so just be aware of that. If you move it at all, then it registers a number. This is a blow up, again, of a different item measure. Does your state participate in the behavioral risk factor surveillance system? And here I've just moved the scale to reflect 3.5. So on this 10-point scale, again, only for illustrative purposes, I probably should have put it at 5 instead of 3.5. But you can see I've got it at 3.5. And saying that's my assessment of how important this measure is to the health surveillance and epidemiological investigation subdomain. This is, I guess this is an example here. Example of where 0 counts. If you click this little slider and you leave it there, then 0 will pop up. I do believe that you can, if you change your mind and you touched it by mistake and you really want it as a non-response, you can click that do not know, or you can highlight this 0 over here and hit delete, and it'll take it away. What's next? Well, many of you have participated in Delphi processes previously, and so you know that a Delphi process is all about convergence. If by some miracle everybody has the same score on everything, then that would be fantastic and there would be perfect convergence. But that never happens, of course. And so what we will do is we'll compile the results and we'll send them back to you for a second round. And so, you know, a lot of times there might be an even distribution across the scale. And so what do we do with that, right? Yeah, we could calculate an average, but that's not really a good indication of what the true intent of the Delphi group is. It would be like a statistics professor who holds their one hand in a bucket of ice water and their other hand over a candle and says, on average, my temperature is pretty good. And, you know, we want to avoid that. So we want to send the results back out to you and ask you to assess a second time. And we're hoping that we can, you know, when you look at the results, your own results together with everyone else's, that people will converge toward a central tendency somewhere along that scale. How many rounds will there be? Well, I don't know, but you know, this is not going to go on forever, of course. And so, you know, we know we'll do at least 2, and then we'll see from there. Because there are other elements to this that'll be much easier to do, and that is we would like people to also evaluate the subdomains. Now, the work group members saw this previously in some of the other work groups. That's much quicker. That's looking at two subdomains within a domain and asking you to distribute the percentage of importance between them, or in the healthcare delivery domain where there are 5 or 6 subdomains, taking those 5 or 6 and so that's a much quicker, less onerous, time-consuming. And that's all I have. I hope that that this is useful to you. I'm going to stay on the line here if anybody has any questions. And with that, I think I'll just be quiet and let folks talk or ask a question if they have any.
This is Mary McQueen, and just if I completed this process actually yesterday, so I just wanted to hear if there was anything I missed, but it was not difficult to do. So I found it pretty good to work through and to think about, and didn't take much time at all.